here in Iraq, and as you mentioned, I'm doing a groundbreaking for our embassy here in Baghdad, and we will be opening a consulate in Najaf soon as well. But we also have scope for economic cooperation between Iraq and Pakistan. I hosted the first business forum between the Pakistani business community and the Iraqi business community. There's immense potential for investment on both sides, and the Iraqi government is also working on diversifying their economy, and they have a an initiative with a great deal of potential where they're constructing a development corridor. And I've spoken to my Iraqi counterparts and the Prime Minister of Iraq and requested them that Pakistan should also be included in this development corridor. So I believe there's a lot of scope for economic cooperation, security cooperation, and cultural and religious engagement.
Let's talk about one of the biggest challenges that faces Pakistan, and that's climate change, particularly for you as a foreign minister as well. The Pakistan economy is still recovering from last year's devastating floods. Now, they did highlight the international community's responsibility toward helping Pakistan. There were a lot of promises made, including the United Nations-led post-disaster needs assessment, which said that Pakistan needed $16.3 billion in aid. Has any of that aid, have you got even close to any of that being delivered to Pakistan?
So thank you very much, and I think you've touched on an extremely important issue, not just for Pakistan, but the world at large. A year ago, Pakistan suffered the most devastating climate catastrophe that we've ever seen in our country's history, with a third of our landmass underwater, 1 in 7 Pakistanis affected. That's 33 million people, and obviously that has had an outsized effect on our economy. As far as our reconstruction plans are concerned, we don't only want to build back, but we want to build back better in a more climate resilient fashion. And to that end, Pakistan co-hosted with the UN Secretary General a climate resilient Pakistan conference in Geneva in order to raise the necessary funds. We had set our target at half of what was required by the damage needs assessment. So our target was about $8 billion, and we sort of overperformed. We touched between $9 and $10 billion as far as pledges are concerned. We are working to materialize those pledges while at the same time engaging with the IMF to finalize our IMF program. And of course, once our IMF program is in place, I imagine we'll receive even more of the resources from those resources pledged by countries or multilateral institutions at our conference for a climate resilient Pakistan.
But pledges need to become actual cash given to the country, and there is a lot of donor fatigue when it comes to Pakistan. Funds have been mismanaged in the past. I mean, you must be coming up against that as foreign minister. A lot of international community members saying to you,
allow me to just correct you right there. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not. There's quite a lot of misinformation about funds being mismanaged in the past. In fact, every single accusation about funds mismanagement as far as disaster management is concerned, be it the 2005 earthquake, be it the 2010-11 floods, or now indeed these floods, while there has been frivolous accusations, no accusation has been proven truthful. And I think that's why, I mean, sort of the biggest proof that this accusation doesn't hold any weight is the fact that Pakistan, despite the odds, despite the fact that the world is completely focused on the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and most of not only humanitarian budgets, but a lot of European and Western countries' budgets are going towards that conflict. Despite all these challenges, Pakistan received support from everywhere, from the West all the way to the East, you're right, as far as pledges are concerned, because this was a development conference. So while a couple of $100 million were in the form of grants, the large chunk of the finance financing we've managed to arrange are either through bilateral loans or through multilateral institutions, such as the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and such. So the arrangements we've made with international financial institutions, we've already started working on much of those, for example, in my home province in Sindh. But it will take time for us to materialize the full amount.
Let's look to the region now and begin with Afghanistan. The Taliban has returned to power in Afghanistan in 2021. Pakistan's position was, let's give them a chance. Pakistan can't completely afford to disengage from Kabul. But has the Taliban failed Pakistan's hope and expectations?
Look, I think that it has been slightly over a year since the fall of Kabul. And of course, there were many expectations from the new regime, and they're still, while they have delivered in some areas, there's a long way to go in many other areas. As far as Pakistan's position on Afghanistan, I think you'll find Pakistan's position is in line with the position of the international community. We also request that the interim government in Afghanistan fulfill their pledges to the international community and to their own people, be it to do with women's rights or women's education, or their commitment for their soil not to be used by a terrorist or to conduct terrorist activity in other countries. But we still believe that engagement is the solution, and not only Pakistan but the entire international community must engage with Afghanistan, because it is in all our interests that Afghanistan becomes a secure, prosperous country, sort of at one with itself and with its neighbors. And in order to do that, it requires not just Pakistan, but the entire international community to engage with Afghanistan. And then, of course, it is also incumbent on the interim government in Afghanistan that they live up to their commitments to the international community.
But there's also domestic issues here as well. The Pakistani Taliban remain a threat. There was a very recent incident in northwestern Pakistan that left 2 soldiers and 2 militants dead. I mean, this must have an impact on the relationship with the Afghan Taliban. You're
absolutely correct to point that out. And the biggest bone of contention we have is the security threat that we face, particularly from the Taliban Pakistan. We've seen a quantitative increase in the number of terrorist attacks in Pakistan following the fall of Kabul, and we are engaged with the Afghan authorities with sort of a very strong request for them to take serious action against such groups. I hosted the Afghan foreign minister in Pakistan. We also had a trilateral meeting along with the China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and the messaging out of our engagements there did include specifically action against terrorist groups.
What does your relationship look like with Tehran at the moment? Should we expect a visit like the one you've just made to Baghdad?
I've already been to Tehran, I think it's been almost a year now since my maiden visit, and then recently, just last month, I accompanied the Prime Minister to inaugurate 2 projects at the border between Pakistan and Iran. One was a border market to encourage cross-border trade between Iran and Pakistan. We inaugurated a border market, and we also inaugurated a transition line where we're procuring electricity from Iran for Gwadar in Balochistan. So we're indeed engaged with Iran just as much as we're engaged with Iraq.
Did the subject of Iran come up during your talks with your Iraqi counterparts? Iran clearly has a very good relationship, but controversial, with Iraq.
I think that particularly recently, given the positive relationship, positive development between the relationship of Saudi Arabia and Iran, and the engagement that was coordinated with China, and Iraq played a large role in that, which has resulted in both countries re-establishing diplomatic relations and reopening their embassy. That is that was very positive news, not only for Iran and Saudi Arabia, but our region and the world at large. And we're all optimistic that hopefully through engagement we will be able to resolve all issues, and we will see an increase of the peace dividend within the region.
Now, let's talk about the region slightly wider. China has always been a very key ally of Pakistan, but it has been accused of almost loan shark tactics when it comes to developing infrastructure within Pakistan, that the money that China is giving to Pakistan is coming at quite a high cost. Is that an assessment that you would agree with, or do you think China is still a fair weather partner?
No, I most certainly don't agree with that assessment, and I think that unfortunately those with a biased attitude consistently repeat this claim without any proof. We have engaged with China over the years. We have an all-weather strategic partnership with China, and we have through the One Belt, One Road initiative and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, Pakistan has developed its energy infrastructure, its communication infrastructure, its ports infrastructure. Given the amount of work we have done, obviously that amount of development always comes with a cost, but we are optimistic that we will be able to live up to all our commitments, and development is the right of all countries, not just a few countries, and it is the responsibility of the governments in Pakistan to develop their infrastructure and to encourage economic prosperity for their people. As a result of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, we are optimistic that there will be an increase in economic activity not only in Pakistan but also in China, and we can complement each other's economies.
Now, Imran Khan was wanting closer relations with China. He wanted closer relations with Russia. That was seen as very controversial. It's one of the things that led to his downfall. Where is Russia's relationship with Pakistan right now? Do you have a relationship?
So as far as Mr. Khan is concerned, I do not share your assessment whether vis-a-vis his approach to China or to Russia. But as far as this government is concerned, we are committed to maintaining relations with all countries, engaging with all countries, and we've seen an enhanced engagement with the Russian Federation since the new unity government has come into power, and we want to develop deep, meaningful relations with economic ties need to be enhanced, a whole host of ties need to be enhanced with Russia, but at the same time we maintain our neutrality and don't want to get drawn into the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. As far as China is concerned, I already sort of touched on that briefly. We have always, and we will seek to continue to enhance our cooperation with China. If Imran Khan, while in power, also worked with the Chinese government, that is a continuation and not an anomaly as far as Pakistan's foreign policy is concerned. The only person to blame for Mr. Khan's downfall is himself, and I'm sure that history will prove that to be the case.
But among the supporters of Imran Khan, they squarely believe that the army was the one that brought him down. Amongst the supporters of Imran Khan, support for the army is at an all-time low. Many commentators in Pakistan are suggesting that whilst it has been acknowledged by retired army officers that there is a lack of support now for the army, as an institution, the army is still very strong. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that the army is unpopular in Pakistan?
I really appreciate that you've given me the opportunity actually to address this question, because while Mr. Khan's supporters might hold this view, it is not based in reality or fact. As far as the role of the army in Pakistan's politics, well, of course, no one can hide the fact that we have been, sort of more than half of our history, been governed by military rule. And I stand before you today. My party, the Pakistan People's Party, has challenged each and every single dictatorship in Pakistan's history. From the last dictatorship we had was Mr. Musharraf's dictatorship, and Mr. Khan's political history is this, that he has supported every dictator and he supported every autocrat in Pakistan's history. Even Mr. Khan's rise to power in 2018, it's a well-documented fact, a proven and established fact, that he was brought into power through a rigged election in collaboration with some former officers of the Pakistan army. Mr. Khan's problem with the Pakistan's army began in April of last year, when they declared that they would not be involved in politics and they would not take sides. Mr. Khan's issue with the army in Pakistan is not that they're not involved in politics. His problem with the Pakistani army is they're not getting involved to support him. As far as the army's popularity as an institution is concerned, the PTI supporters may be upset with the Pakistan army for not violating the constitution and supporting Mr. Khan, but the majority of Pakistani citizens want the Pakistan army to remain apolitical and not intervene in the politics of the country, and a majority of the people of Pakistan are deeply offended by the actions that took place on May 9th, where Mr. Khan encouraged his supporters to attack army installations in Pakistan, the Corps Commander House in Lahore, the General Headquarters in Rawalpindi, and many military installations. Such an attack has never taken place by any political party in the history of Pakistan. And now, those who were involved in these attacks on our military installations must face the consequences of the law of the land.
But you must agree, and you've almost said it yourself, the Pakistani army does have an outsized influence in Pakistan. That cannot continue the way it is, surely. You've got a change has to come.
Absolutely. But we are the ones who have, not from today, but for generations, been struggling for that change. We don't believe that that change comes overnight, and we don't believe that change can come by attacking military institutions in the country. The only way that change can come would be for democratic forces and civilian institutions such as Parliament to take their place within Pakistani society and exert themselves. Of course, while Mr. Khan was Prime Minister, he paid very little attention to Parliament, and when he should have been leader of opposition, he left Parliament. The fate of Pakistan can't be decided on the streets of Pakistan. It has to be decided by Parliament, and that is the only way that Pakistani democracy can be strengthened. When civilians take their own space, we'll ease the army out of politics.
Now, you've been in the job for just over 14 months as Foreign Minister. Indeed, you're the youngest Foreign Minister in the country's history, but you've been in the rough and tumble of Pakistani politics since your mother, Benazir Bhutto, was assassinated in 2007. How would you sum up your experience?
I would sum up my experience as that of Pakistan's experience over this time, that it's been complicated. As far as our development as a democracy, it has very much been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. We saw a lot of progress on that front between 2008 to 2013, and we've seen the health of our democracy deteriorate post-2008. Now there's a lot of work that needs to be done to strengthen our democracy. We've seen that the political stability that was a dividend of that democracy, was a dividend of the Charter of Democracy that was signed by my mother, lasted for 10 years, and that political stability from 2008 till 2018 resulted in economic development and economic stability. And as soon as we saw political stability, we've seen challenges for our economy. So I believe that Pakistan has many challenges, sort of a perfect storm. We've got the climate crisis that you mentioned, we've got the fall of Kabul, we've got the implications of the Ukraine-Russian conflict, and we will have our own domestic issues. But all of these challenges can be overcome. These are difficult challenges, but they are temporary challenges, and I am confident that the people of Pakistan will come together to rise to meet these challenges and build a better future for ourselves.
Now, on her return to Pakistan, I did ask your mother, Benazir Bhutto, why she would return. I said, it often ends badly for your family. Why risk your life? Why return? Let me ask you the same question in a slightly different way. Your grandfather was executed, your mother assassinated, your uncle was killed. Do you regret returning to Pakistan?
Oh, most certainly I don't regret returning to Pakistan. Sort of the thing that drives me every day is the desire to fulfill my mother's vision for our country. And in my 14 months as foreign minister, I've seen the potential that we have, and we only need an opportunity to unlock that potential. And then the sky's the limit for Pakistan. We are a country that has been ravaged by the consequences of the Afghan war and our own internal decisions, but I have full faith in our country and in our system. As far as my family's history, you're absolutely right. It's one that's almost out of a Greek tragedy. But actually, I'm here in Baghdad, and I'm on my way today. I'm going to be going to Karbala, and I often think that if the Prophet's family suffered such difficulties in their lifetime, and our sacrifices or our difficulties are nothing in comparison. And with struggling, and only through facing the odds do you get to receive the fruits of your labor. And I'm sure one of the fruits of our sacrifice, one of the fruits of this labor, will be a more democratic, peaceful, prosperous, and ultimately progressive Pakistan.
Sounds remarkably like your mother's words, democracy is the best revenge. Is democracy actually in Pakistan, though?
I think that Pakistan is transitioning towards, well, it has the potential to transition towards democracy. We are standing at the fork in the road. And I think that the populist post-fact politics that Mr. Khan has introduced to Pakistani society is really shaking our young democracy to its foundations. We've seen how a 200-year-old democracy like the United States has been shaken by populism over there. And this has been a fundamental challenge to us. All the norms, democratic norms that we had established 2008 in order to become a semi-functioning democracy are now being challenged, but it is now up to us to ensure that we implement the Constitution, the law, and do whatever we can to combat these challenges, so that it is the interest in strengthening democracy rather than undermining it. But I would absolutely admit we are that fork roads, and now it depends on the decisions that the people of Pakistan take.
Pakistani Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.